number of us here are wondering what motivated these alleged vigilantes to do what they allegedly did?
It's hard to go into the mind, I guess, is exactly what it was. But I would say that it would appear on its surface that they thought they were being righteous in looking at potential people who were trying to lure young people, specifically young males, and target them.
Were they connected to any luring victims in the past?
We don't have anything that would suggest that. Just suggest that they believe that they seem to believe very strongly in what they did, and what they did was righteous.
Belong to a particular group at all?
The accused on this one? Yeah, not that we're aware of. No, there's been. You'll see from the media release that there was. We did have our hate crimes take a look at this during the course of the interviews with the accused and subsequent investigation. There's nothing that's led us to believe that this is a hate-motivated crime or that there's any hate bias in this whatsoever.
Can you explain how the vigilantes became known to the police?
So we initially had a report about an assault. Subsequent to that investigation, some of the initial facts or the initial related information from that just wasn't adding up. So we did a deeper dive into the investigation. That led us to some additional information, which we were able to look into. We were able to secure a better location of where some of these things may have occurred, and then found that there was a number of other potential offenses that were very similar in nature. So everything just sort of coming together is what led us towards the accused. We were able to find some linking vehicles and then use some other units within the Calgary Police Service that were helped us identify potential people here, and then we brought them in for interviewing, which is what led to the charges.
So this was initially reported by one of the victims?
That's correct.
Can you elaborate on the locations where this was?
So it's happened in a few different locations within Calgary. Typically, they were secluded areas, parking lots, low traffic volume areas. So there was an arranged meeting where both the accused, I guess, and victim would meet up, and then that's where the assault would take place. So.
Can you tell us what social media site was being used to lure the victims?
Commonly through all three of these, it was the site Grindr.
Any other questions?
Just so in your words, you were saying like the accused believed that their actions were righteous. Well, what is the police take on that kind of vigilante style of justice, I guess, in this case?
We'll never support it. If you do have information that there's an offense of this nature doing, we fully encourage them to come forward. We would investigate that like the same way we investigated this, with the same degree of vigor in this one, and then we would assist in trying to help with that too.
Does this kind of action, does it hamper your guys' efforts, or how does it affect the work that you guys?
I mean, the vigilante type activity. I'm not going to kid you. This investigation was a challenge from the very beginning. Not only in the initial information that came forward, but then of course the subsequent investigation. And it's not normal that we would be charging a victim on this, but there's compellable information here that an additional offenses had been committed, and we can't ignore that. So, how does any vigilante action is not supported by the police? It's not. There's always it can be somewhat one-sided, and the information may not be accurate. And I think if we learn anything from oftentimes social media, is that the information that comes through is unverified and maybe not quite the way it was relayed. So that's why we would have our detectives and do something like this, where we can do a robust and fulsome investigation that brings out all aspects of that investigation.
Some of these vigilante types would say, they'd say, well, police aren't doing enough. That's why we're doing this. You guys aren't catching them. We're the ones who are, and in fact, in this case, they're the ones who maybe they're using the wrong methods, but they're the ones who brought these people to light. What would you say?
So what I would say to that is first of all, you're right. We can't be everywhere. We ask often that we rely upon the public to help us do our job too. There's 3,000 police officers in the city of Calgary here. There's well over, I think we're saying almost 1.5 million people in the city. The numbers don't equate. We need the community to help us with what we do and the work that we do. We've said that time and time again. And in a course of this, if you have information that would have led us to something investigate, we never had that opportunity, I guess, is what I would say to that. So provide us with the opportunity to at least be able to investigate this and look into it. But we do not condone the actions of the offenders on what they've done here.
There's been an online social media movement, maybe not the right word, but a trend to catch a predator is what they call it online, where people do just this. I mean, there have been cases in the United States, several this year. There was one in March in Regina where exactly this happened. Do you have any evidence that this might be part of that kind of an online trend? Were they intending to post this on social media?
Yep. So there's nothing to suggest that this is related, and our investigators did look into that to see if there was anything related. I'm well aware of that. There's also been charges laid in something similar in Edmonton. I think it's more coincidence than anything else. You look at the date of time when our offenses occurred. Ours are in early March. I don't know the exact time frame of theirs, but our investigators are working with the Edmonton Police Service as well. No ties at this point in time. I think the difference between some of what you're discussing too is that, and I can't say that I've spent a lot of time, I've heard of those programs, but I do think oftentimes they're not operating in isolation as this particular case was. They may be working with law enforcement or within a law enforcement stream to provide that information afterwards. But I think the big part about those is that that is simply exposing people. This is exposing and then assaulting them. There's a huge difference of what's happening in some of those things. So.
What about underage sexual luring? Are we seeing more of that? What are the trends on that?
Honestly, it's a bit of a, I'm not going to say an untapped area. It's an area where it's very difficult to get information. Oftentimes, the victims are often reluctant to come forward. It can be hard for us. But I know we've been working with a number of agencies, non-governmental agencies, too, to help bridge some of that gap. Off the top of my head, I was literally just talking about this with some of our officers today, but there's a number of them we do work with. We do work with some of the hotels in the area, too, to try to target and find some of the people that are doing these things, and at least identify where they are, and then try to bring those victims on board towards prosecution of the offenders on these things.
So do you guys know if do you have evidence that they were videotaping these assaults and posting them somewhere?
We do have some evidence from this that would be along those lines. In terms of posting it, we don't have any evidence that would lead to believing it was posted. There's nothing to suggest that, but we do have some evidence that is along those same lines. So.
Is there a possibility it wasn't posted, but do you have any evidence that might have been the intent? That they may have.
Nothing that's come out during the course of the investigation that led us down that road. So.
Is there a possibility there's more victims that should come forward that have been, lured and assaulted?
In something like this, it doesn't seem like it would be a first time offense. They seemed quite skilled at how they lured, the planning, the execution of what they wanted to do. It would lead me to believe that there may have been a couple of trial runs on something like this. That being said, at this point in time, we only have the 3 victims, so we do encourage any other victims that have been a victim of a assault of this nature, of course, to come forward, because that's a crime we want to investigate right to the end if we can. That's the goal. So.
Given that those victims are also facing charges, what do you think the likelihood is that someone's going to go, I'll come forward?
So that's the part I talked about with the challenging investigation at the beginning. Again, our job as the police is to assess the evidence that's in front of us and the information that came in front of us. That wasn't the initial goal of the investigation, but subsequent information came to light that we would be remiss to ignore when there's potentially other offenses occurring from this one. It is disappointing that's we've had to go down that route as well. But again, there was some targeted behavior here that led to some of this. That's not victim blaming. It's saying that is exactly the evidence that was in front of us. So we followed the evidence, and as I said, we can't just ignore it regardless of the heinous nature of this offense. So
do police use the same kind of tactics as these vigilantes, at least online?
So we're delving into an area that I'm going to be perfectly honest is not my expertise. So I think I'm going to be a bit hesitant to get into some of that. Do we have a unit that does some work on this? I would encourage you to talk to them and to provide a bit more context on this. But we've had to use a number of investigative avenues. The world's changed quite a bit. So yes, have we had undercover operators? Do we continue to have that? Yes. And so they act in a number of different capacities. But I'll also add to it that there's a high degree of training that goes into that. So it's not as simple as just walking on, posing as something and doing it. The public expects, and we have to comply to a much higher standard of how we would do that. And the courts expect that too.
It seems to me like when you're talking about, I mean, you have people working with the hotel association, you have trained officers. There seems to be a great deal of effort put by the Calgary Police towards catching predators in this way. I mean, that seems to be a very strong message to vigilantes saying, back off, don't do this because we've got this covered.
I believe it is, but there's still going to be those people out there that, to your point, may feel that we're not doing enough. But I go back to my original statement: is that we're only one entity here. We can't do our job unless people come forward with information. We're not just going to inadvertently stumble across absolutely everything. In a perfect world, that would be exactly how it'd be. There'd be a police officer on every corner, and we'd be able to just see it for ourselves. But that doesn't it's not a reality.
Reality is, I think we all know in this room that there are going to be people who view the people you charge with assault as heroes. How do you feel about that?
I think that they don't know all the facts of the case in this, and I think that I would challenge them to look into themselves and ask themselves, what if I was the victim of a crime like this inadvertently, that somebody didn't misjudge or had misinformation on? What would that look like?
One last question, sorry, for me, just for homework. So these vigilantes are, again, thinking that they were doing something right. Now, obviously being charged, what potentially could they be looking at? Like jail time? Like, you know what I'm getting at is like, here, we're thinking we're doing a good thing, but now, like, this is what happens if you think vigilante is a good idea. This is the amount of jail time.
So the penalties I don't have them in front of me, and I apologize. The penalties for these offenses are outlined under the criminal code. It's not really my place to pass judgment on. That's their day in court. It goes back to the innocent till proven guilty statement I made before. They'll have their day in court, and it'll be up to a judge to decide what, if any, punishment will be necessary in this particular case. There's so many things that come into play in that. It really wouldn't be my place to really place judgment. But as I said, the offenses are outlined in the criminal code for the maximum penalty that's available.
March 14th that brought this to your attention, that incident. When did the other incidents that you've also been charged?
2 incidences took place on March the 9th, 2025. 2 in the same day.
These seem like pretty serious assaults. I mean, we're talking, attacking people with baseball bats. This isn't just fist fighting.
Nope. It seems very organized and orchestrated. There was a clear intent to intimidate and potentially cause violence to these more violence to these individuals than was already taken upon them.
How bad is
Injured
it?
were they?
Sorry, how it injured? Enough that I can't speak to the other 2 on the March the 9th one. I can say that the March 14th was enough that individual was in hospital. So, and for I won't say extended stay, but for a stay. So, it's not just cuts and bruises and send you home. It was more significant than that. And I think the side of that too is that there's an emotional trauma in there that we can't really put a price on or a time frame on when it takes for someone to recover from something like that.